If I was asked this question, you're going to get a different answer. And so you're going to get the current day answer today of the top lesson I learned from him. A lesson, and this ties back in after my 2 years of working with Gary. I'm going to go make a giant, 200 employee fitness, 1,000 employee fitness empire, whatever it is. And everyone is so different, and you can't mirror your schedule, routine, life ambition. You can't mirror that off of someone else.
All right, guys. So we're back for another episode of Defining Success with Matt Foster. I have my good friend and personal trainer, Mike Vacanti, here. We've been working on and off together since 2018. Every time I've been with him, I got a little leaner. Every time I wasn't with him, I was a little bit bigger, and not in a good way. And so thanks to accountability with Mike over here. He really knows what he's talking about. He has a really patient spirit with his clients, and I've gotten to experience that over the last couple of years. On a side note, he trains Gary V, if some of you guys know who that is. And beyond that, he is a husband. He trains other trainers. He's an author, and then he has other secret projects that he has going on that he may or may not ever release to the world. So, Mike, I appreciate having you on today, man.
Thank you very much for having me. Congrats on the podcast. I'm pumped for this.
Thanks so much. This will be technically episode 3 coming out. Today, we're recording this on August 1st. We're actually dropping the podcast today, but this episode will be available in a few weeks, and I can't wait to drop it. I know we're going to have an amazing conversation today. So
I'm excited.
To catch everybody up a little bit, what is a short form on where Mike V is at today? 2023, what are you up to? What's kind of the bulk of what you're doing, business and personal? Little snapshot of what Mike's life looks like today.
Yeah, right now it's much more low key than it has been on average over the last 10 to 12 years, I'd say. I guess real quick backstory, got an accounting degree out of college, worked 2 years in corporate auditing public companies, didn't like it at all. 2012, quit my job. 2013, launched the fitness business. And from 13 to 18, I would say I worked extraordinarily hard pretty much every day. And then from 2018 till now, it's been more coasting, like a gradual shift in terms of, I guess, work-life balance, to use a cliche term. But yeah, these days I'm doing one-on-one online coaching. I'm working with Gary. So the bulk of it is still helping people with their fitness. I also have the fitness business mentorship, where we help coaches, build their business, but really become better coaches is what the base of it is.
Yeah.
And then, a lot of family time back here in Minnesota where I grew up, and have the majority of my family's around here. So I get to spend 10x more time with them than I had when I was out in New York. So yeah, things are good.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I would say that I've listened to you kind of talk about, because I think you grinded for a number of years, right? So you're putting in, thrashing and getting after it, right? And I think I forget where I read it, but it's something along the state of like swing, right? Like when you're actually on a swing, you hit a certain point where you're actually like in stride, like you worked hard to get good at rowing the boat, right? So the boat wants to actually go fast. So we thrash and thrash and thrash, but at a certain point, maybe we actually get good enough that we're hitting the water like glass, right? We're just floating along. So I to give you credit, I think you like to underplay your cards on that one a little bit, but I would say that you've arrived in some ways, which is nice, because what you have going on and the impact that you do, it's just that it's in an efficient and effective way that works for your life. But it also leaves room too, because you have a little bit more time on your hands sometimes to figure out what that next level of impact is. So I would say, my friend Mike, that you're probably doing even more than you were ever doing before, but you've beaten the game in some ways on figuring out how to make it easier for yourself, I feel like.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So and then from there, so let's go 2023, good documentary style. Let's flash back. 10 to 14-year-old Mike Vacanti. What were you doing at that time? Kind of put me right in the place. What did it smell like? What did it look like? What were you doing in that key time between 10 to 14? Because you would be coming into puberty and athleticism, which kind of leads to some of the training stuff. But what were you doing at that time?
So fifth through eighth grade, roughly, um, hockey was the number one thing I was interested in. Was
Okay.
playing almost year round. Absolutely loved it. Uh, I was a good student. I cared about school and like wanted to
Mm-hmm.
do well in school. Um, I caddied in the summers. I think starting at 10, either 10 or 11, I want to say. And so I was working part time in those summers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I remember that era was probably the first time I remember like recognizing physique and like being insecure about my body in some way, and like, you know, cliche dude stuff at wanting abs, wanting muscles, that kind of thing, but
Mm-hmm.
not seriously training in any way. You know, I got cut from the eighth grade hockey team, like from the
Mm-hmm.
program actually, and had to go play at our crosstown rival, which was a moment where it was like, okay, you know, I'm not very good. Do I want to continue playing and try to make the high school team or do something else? I decided I loved it and wanted to keep playing. And so that was an inflection point in terms of, all right, if you want to get better, you can. And my dad led me through a lot of this. It's like, but here's what you need to do. Like, go shoot 500 pucks every single day in the off season. Like, do these plyometrics, get these extra skates in, start like strength training. And so I don't know if it was sixth grade or seventh grade when I got my first weight set in the basement, like a real, you know, I don't know, you bought them at Sears, or I don't even remember where back then, but not an Olympic bar. It was like a 15-pound bar and then weights that you put on. And so I was doing some haphazard, you know, magazine workouts.
Yeah,
And
muscle. I got my first muscle and fitness when I was like 14, and just the three sets of 12, man.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And just all of the cliche wrong stuff, like, you know, doing tons of crunches, thinking that I would end up looking like Brad Pitt in Fight Club, like that
Yeah.
type of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's where I was at that age range.
Okay. Yeah, got it. So, and then to kind of finish that story too, did you have some like huge improvement from doing the plyometrics, from being disciplined? Did you kind of level up your game in hockey, or was that like, did you still end up just having to play for the crosstown rivals, got as good as you could, got it, and then kind of moved on from there as far as hockey goes?
No, I, you know, the story has a happy ending. The hard
Okay.
work paid off. I made the team the next year, made the high school team sophomore year. You know, it just sounds like the jock who never made it out of his like prime, who's bragging about history. But yeah, we went to the state tournament my senior year, and Minnesota hockey is a big deal, so it had a happy ending. The real lesson from all of that was adopting a growth mindset,
Mm-hmm.
and the understanding that, okay, through my actions I can actually become better at something that I'm not naturally very good at, which I
Mm.
applied to all kinds of things.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just kind of a key that unlocked that mindset of like, even if, which we're not, like, how do we expect to be good at something if we're trying it for the first time, right?
Mm.
We're bound to naturally be bad, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so having that mindset of knowing that, hey, I could be bad and I can make myself great. It's just more about what do you want to apply yourself to in
Mm-hmm.
your life. Going forward from there, because I imagine just the discipline of being in sports, right? Kind of there is some sense of boring routine, which is like the commitment to the routine, shooting the 500 pucks a day, lifting the weights, you know, growing into your body a little bit. Um, when did you start really kind of catching on with yourself that fitness was something that you were really into? And then also that, you know, that there was a possibility that you would want to help other people in fitness.
Mm, very different times. The
Okay.
possibility that I could help people in fitness didn't come until I was probably 24.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but the kind of hyper focus on it for myself and realizing that I could change my own physique, my own performance in hockey, my own, you know, strength, and just kind of love of lifting slash nutrition for myself was 15, 16 years old. I
Okay.
remember I remember the weight room just being a place where it just felt good to let out anger is what it felt like at the time. And I didn't have
Mm-hmm.
anything really to be angry about, cliche adolescent stuff, but it was I just have distinct memories of staying after gym class and using the high school weight room during our lunch period and like having these amazing workouts and it feeling therapeutic for me at the time.
Yeah.
And so that combined with, then it was I want to get lean and I didn't have any idea what I was doing and succeeded. I just didn't eat as much and was doing weird things. Like I read canned tuna is great. So I was eating canned tuna for dinner every night for a few, like just weird stuff that I was trying. Um, but like saw some progress, built a little muscle, lost a little fat. And yeah, so that was when I started really liking fitness, which progressed and I became more intelligent about it over the years, started finding better information. Um, probably 19, 20, 21 when I was in college, took some nutritional science classes in college as for a business degree, you had to take science electives and nutrition was the thing I was the most interested in. So I took those
Mm-hmm.
courses, really enjoyed it. Um, Random forums, websites, blogs back in the '06 to 2011 range that I was reading and becoming educated just as a passion. But yeah, the unlock of I could help somebody with this didn't happen until I was searching for something to do post accounting job. And when
Mm.
I quit my job, I didn't even know I wanted to be in fitness. I just knew that I absolutely hated what I was doing and I like the money wasn't worth it. I would do anything else in the world. And
Like even down to the
and
point like you drive, and you knew you're reasonably smart, but like you drive a UPS truck, anything but like grind out these Excel spreadsheets and tax forms and do this work.
anything. And a lot of it was like dislike of authority and the corporate structure and the politics involved and the disproportionate incentives. Like you can outwork somebody by 300%, but they're still getting a 7% raise and you're getting a 12% raise. Like that's not reflective of I wanted something where there was more upside. um yeah I
Uncapped potential. Yeah, because also too, there's a seniority play. Like if someone's been there 10 years ahead of you, even if they're half the accountant that you are, that management's going to play their role of like
all of that.
keeping Bob happy. And yeah, Mike, good job, Mike. You'll get your level 3 here soon or whatever. Yeah, controller
Yeah.
or whatever, right?
and and
Just
to be fair, I just wasn't that good at it. I just like wasn't great at making small talk with the clients, wasn't great at like getting along with everyone on the team. I remember one time wanting to do something during lunch, like work ahead on something during lunch so that I could go do something after work. It was like, no, we all eat lunch together here. Like that's how we do things here. Like we're building a culture and so we need to make friends. It was very what to each their own. I'm
the oxygen was pulled out of the room for you. It wasn't for Mike. So
yes.
going forward from there, what was the period of time from accounting job ending, right? And you're a smart guy again, so you kind of put together some reserves of, hey, I got some money to live off to make this decision, right?
Mhm.
Removing some debt, utilizing playing some poker at that time, softer
Mhm.
games, online
Mhm.
poker. We're the
Mhm.
same age, so I can kind of
Mhm.
remember each
Oh,
step of the way when you could just click and make money pretty much.
dude.
Just more about time being put in and being a decently above average player.
So I quit my accounting job in July of late June of 2012.
Okay.
If for any other poker players, Black Friday was April 15th, 2011, which was the day that online poker died in the United States of America,
Hmm.
for all intents and purposes. And I actually had a decent amount of savings at that time, but like somewhat insane percentage. At 40% of my net worth was on Absolute Poker slash Ultimate Bet. So I don't know if anyone remembers, but Poker Stars like immediately paid out, and then Full Tilt, which was the other big site, uh, Poker Stars bought them, and I'm it was 12 years ago. I'm trying to make sure I have this right, but PokerStars bought them, and then their players got paid out fully because these sites didn't keep dollar for dollar player balances.
Just like the bank, right? You make, and
Cor-
yeah, and if you
Correct,
freeze,
but the poker sites aren't backed by the federal government, and
yeah,
so
yeah,
and then Absolute slash Ultimate Bet, it was basically, and we knew this. The games were softer on that site because there was the Russ Chance issue, there was the uh, pot ripper, like basically someone from inside the company who had a glitch where you could see
backdoor, yeah,
everyone
backdoor.
else's hole cards, and then like it was a scammy site, and so it was dumb on my part. But um, that money ended up getting paid out like 5 or 6 years later or something like that, at a point where it wasn't 40% of my net worth anymore. But regardless, that happened, and it felt like a huge setback. And so to answer your question, so I saved up what I felt like was 2 years of runway. It's like, if I don't, I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to try something. If it fails, I can go back to accounting, worst case scenario. But I want to say it was somewhere in the neighborhood of like 35 grand in cash. And between the 2 years of the accounting job, like, doing various things, flipping tickets in college, and I TA'd in college, which covered a semester, like various things. I got my student loans paid off, had this cash reserve. I was like, okay, I'm taking a shot at something other than this. Like, this just feels wrong. And
Mm-hmm.
during that period, yeah, um, I was getting the website up and running. I was researching what other people in the online fitness space were doing, which it's 2012. There were very few people. JC Dean is a name that stood out. The first time I saw his website, I remember thinking like, okay, he writes articles about building muscle and losing fat, and then he sells programs, and then he sells coaching. Like, what, like, you can make money doing this. These were the thoughts I was having in reading his articles. It's like, this is good stuff, but I know this stuff too. I can make a website. I can do this. So I started creating a WordPress site in October 2012, launched it in April of 2013. And yeah, and then shortly thereafter moved to New York City for an internship in fitness. And then shortly after that, got a job on the gym floor, working like 30 hours a week of client work on the Upper East Side in the city. And so I had my own online thing that I was trying to get going that had zero revenue in the first year, but like, I was making content, I was writing blogs and making Facebook posts. And then had the internship, and uh, had the in-person experience, which was huge because at that time I could effectively train myself or someone like me from an age perspective, a performance perspective, no real injuries, not a ton of mindset issues around food. Like, I could train the avatar of me, but working with a diverse population. I worked with an 89-year-old in person. I worked with high school athletes. I worked with everyone in between. Uh, that was massive for kind of laying the foundation of how to coach different types of people.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, shortly after there, introduced to Gary, started coaching Gary in July of 2014 for like every single day, all in, full-time coach. I'll let you take it wherever you want to from here, but that's
Yeah,
kind of the
yeah, and
gap
I
between
think that
accounting
you
and.
actually led it. Yeah, you led it up right to my next question is, so 2014 you start training Gary. It seems like when I go back to do research, right, 2014 you were putting out videos, right, like equals and our alternatives, and starting to do some like fitness slash nutrition content.
Hmm.
And then you really started going heavy when you started dropping your vlogs, right? 2016
Hmm.
daily vlogs, right? Would you say
Hmm.
that Gary was a big champion behind like encouraging either through osmosis because you're seeing what he's doing and obviously he was being successful at it? Was it him or a combination of a few people that you were watching like, hey, you know what? I'm really poised to put myself out there on a daily level for the vlogs and it's going to do nothing but benefit. It's going to be effort. What were your thoughts around that kind of 2014 going into 2016 when you really just, it seems like you hit the ground running in 2016 and kind of like had this like really good 2-3 year run of a lot of like content consistently.
Hmm.
um was that what did some of the genesis happen to that with Gary and then everything else you had seen, like what were your thoughts at that time going from 2014 to 2016?
Yeah, so it was osmosis and him pushing me into it. It was
Okay.
both. Seeing what he's
Yeah.
doing and working out and him being like, "Mike, you need to make content. Mike, you need to make a YouTube show. Mike, you need to have a daily show. Like I had Wine Library TV, you should have something with fitness."
Mm-hmm.
Literally the idea for equals and alternatives came from him because, "Oh, this is healthy, right? I can eat this. It's an organic peanut butter cup." It's like, no, that's literally a Reese's peanut butter cup that is twice as expensive and wrapped up with some fancy packaging. And like the light bulbs for him gave the idea for that series, which I want to say launched in January 2015.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so yes, he was very encouraging around making content for sure.
Yeah.
Plus being around him and his team and watching how they operate,
Did
it's
you
like,
ever
oh,
did you
okay,
ever
this
get
works.
annoyed? Because at first it takes time to catch on to something, right? Did you ever feel like, oh man, come on, Gary, like get off my back a little bit about like because I could see him just like, come on, Mike, just like kind of like how you're goading him in the gym and he's goading you in from a content perspective a little bit, like giving it to you.
There were probably days where it annoyed me. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. But also uh I think that deep down I at that time I knew he was right. If I
Yeah,
wanted to grow, I knew that
yeah,
was the proper path. Um
got it.
yeah.
That's
The
that's where it's
the
at.
the switch to the vlogs, I just always liked watching vlogs.
Mm,
2014, 15, 16. OG fitness vloggers, like Matt Ogus is a name that comes to
mm-hmm,
mind.
mm-hmm.
Um, I liked watching the stuff they would put out, and it was an easy like equals and alternatives was fairly easy, right? Because all right, so when people like podcasts are relatively easy. I have a weekly podcast. It's relatively easy because I sit down and have a conversation with a friend. and
Yeah.
and so like that's easier than quote thinking of what kind of content to make. A Q&A
Mm-hmm.
style show is easy because you have unlimited questions that you can make. Wine library TV is easy because there are infinite bottle like types of wine that you can review.
There, it's like a
And
ping pong. There's something else to interact with back with you versus like actual just like spilling from your
it's
side.
it's not even that. It's that there's literal like you just pick one and talk about it. You already have the content idea set up. You don't need to think about it. And
Mm-hmm.
so with equals and alternatives, there's infinite foods to review. The problem became not the problem. I kind of got sick of it after 100 episodes. It was a lot of the same thing. Like
Yeah.
right and then there was I was going and buying all of these foods, bringing them to my apartment, reviewing them. It wasn't really the cost, but slightly the inconvenience. I don't remember the exact shift, but I just like vlogging is an even quote easier from not it's not easier to make vlogs than other styles of content, but it's very straightforward. Like you just pull a camera out and then live your day. You technically don't have to change anything. You just record everything. You don't have to think about it. Now, people in that era who did vlogs really well did think about it and planned it and had titles and thumbnails and like uh, very clickable stories, and they were changing the way they lived their life that day to make it good vlog content. So there are better and worse ways to do vlogs. But for me at the time, it was just like, all right, I'm kind of tired of this style of content. I'm going to vlog and and yeah, so that was the transition. I liked consuming them, and it felt like something I wanted to make, and so I tried it.
Yeah. And then you had a in Miami almost had you for like a moment for like a day. And then
hmm
and then New York grabbed you right back in its clutches. Um
hmm
talk about what happened in Miami. What was the switch about? Was it the sunshine? Like, oh, I'm gonna go to Florida and make this work. What was the pull to Florida for that moment in time?
So post coaching Gary, we had a 2-year deal from July
Mm-hmm.
2014 to July 2016. After that, in my mind, I was like, okay, now I'm gonna make like Vayner Media of fitness. That's just the
Mm-hmm.
next step, without
Mm-hmm.
any analysis of self or strengths and weaknesses or even what I wanted my life to look like. I just
Yeah.
thought this is the logical next step. And uh, like pretty quickly, I realized that's not what I wanted to do. I ended up traveling around a little bit. I went to Minnesota and spent time with my family. That's when I started coaching my dad. Um,
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it was the fall of 2016, the pull to Florida in general was I used to go there as a kid on family vacation once a year and stay at my grandpa's house and really enjoyed it and have great memories there. And oh, there's 0% state income tax too. And I really like the sun. I've like, it just felt like a cool place to go. But I wasn't fully in. I didn't understand the different parts of Florida for one. Uh, Being not knowing anyone in a city and being completely by myself, I think was part of it. I'm introverted, but like there's still a balance of human interaction that you need. And
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
it just
And you
wasn't
had already built some like foundation, like even going back to New York, you kind of plugged back in. You had some friends, some connections, some familiar
yes.
places that you go to. Like it's like you've already built some intra network into where it's at
Yeah,
versus starting from scratch again.
many. I was there for I guess 3.5 years
Mm-hmm.
and then left for a few months. And yeah, then I was back in the city from 2017 to 2021.
Speaking of your dad, I know you really helped get him pretty jacked, which has to feel like a really good full circle moment, right? Coming back and helping your dad in a real way from a health perspective. Is your dad still? You guys still rocking it on the coaching? And did he back off from that? Are you guys still working together?
Uh, he doesn't. I'm not formally coaching him. I'll send him a
Okay.
training phase now and again if he needs something different. Um, but he's very active. He's stuck with it. He's gotten bigger into golf recently. He picked up pickleball a couple
Mm-hmm.
years ago and has really enjoyed that. And basically, he lost 40 pounds and built a bunch of strength and muscle and went hard training for 5 years, and now it's strength training is more an aspect of his entire fitness regimen with
Yeah.
other types of activities. He's in his 60s, he's retired, he's enjoying, but when he has periods of time where maybe and he's maintained that weight loss, which is huge, and it's much easier to maintain weight loss and body comp than it is to achieve progress on that front. So
Yeah,
he's
no, understood. He kind of picked up some muscle in the fourth quarter a little bit, and then now he's kind of going into like some of his later years effectively with some muscle and still in relatively
in
good
lean
shape.
and good blood work. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
no, I love that. And then kind of touching back on the Gary point a little bit. You've spent quite a bit of time with him. It's very intimate when you're actually training somebody. You get to see the unhappy morning version of yourselves or night version or different points of time and over a long period of time. What are some of the top lessons, maybe like call it 3 lessons that you've really picked up from Gary in your time being close to him?
So at any point between 2014 and today, if I was asked this question, you're going to get a different answer. And so you're going to get the current day answer today of the top
Perfect.
lesson I learned from him. Right now, I was telling you before that we spent the last 5 days in Chicago at the National Sports Card Convention, and Gary's
Yeah.
building out V Friends and building out he's got tons of trading cards associated with that brand that he's creating,
Mm-hmm.
and the sports card convention was insane, and the schedule there
Mm.
was insane. So like I explained earlier in the podcast, my day is pretty, I sleep 8 hours every single night. I like spend time in the sun. I read a book. I'm like work life balance.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we were Gary was like, okay, on this trip, because a lot of our coaching is virtual now at this point. It's like on this trip, I think we can get workouts in every morning, which is perfect, kind of the primary reason I was there. But then he said, I'm not going to be eating much during the day. If you're around at dinners, I'm not going to be picking on stuff I shouldn't be because I'll have you right there with me. I think we could really do some damage and, maybe lose a couple pounds of fat in this week here. So I said, great, I'm in. Like I'll hang for dinners. And then the convention was 8 to 10 plus hours, 12 was set up during the day. And so my schedule there was wake. And by the way, I'm not complaining. Like, I don't even know how many people, billions of people have a harder schedule than this. But for these days, I was waking up at 5:45 and
Mhm.
going and coaching him, and then trying to get my work done. So doing a couple hours of computer work in the morning, and then going to the convention, helping with setup, manning the booths, and like basically interacting with people all day long. And so
Yeah, handling the mob, because yeah, convention life is like you're
packed,
you're you're in a sea, like just a sea of monsters, pretty
packed
much.
and interacting because you're manning the
Yeah,
card tables. Like, how much is this one? Will he accept this? Calling this person, hey, your card's got this offer. Like, so, and then afterwards, meeting back up, going to dinner. These dinners are going until, 11:30. Basically, several days in a row of 5 hours of sleep and human interaction for 17 straight hours plus. And I just ran out of gas. I was like, this is, I felt like I needed a month to recover from it. Um,
yeah, yeah.
and so a lesson, and this ties back into after my 2 years of working with Gary. Oh, I'm going to go make a giant, 200 employee fitness, 1,000 employee fitness empire, whatever it is. And e- everyone is so different, and you can't mirror your schedule, routine, life ambition. You can't mirror that off of someone else.
No.
Um, and you shouldn't try to. And so that's like a big takeaway, because I didn't realize there was a lot of mimicry going on from 14 to 16, 17. And uh, that's just not how I'm cut out. I don't he has a he's wired in a way that's different than the way that I am wired.
Hmm.
And so a big lesson is be who you are, don't try to be who somebody else is.
Mm. Yeah, take the principles, not the formulas. Because if you
Yeah.
follow the formula that's Gary V, but it doesn't align with the principles of who Mike V is built on, you're gonna crumble. There's only so long, like Gary can hang with that. He thrives. His battery is juiced coming off
Mm-hmm.
that week, just like probably exploding with ideas and just excited to have the next conversation. Right, for you,
Mm-hmm.
you're just like can we have like some
I need to
silence for
hibernate.
the next
Yeah.
48 hours and just like keep the room a little dim for me, right? Like two
100%.
very different people. So
100%.
one of the three lessons being be authentic to yourself, like really kind of understand yourself and your needs as a extrovert or introvert, and be
Sure,
aware of
both
that in
both
building your life around
both
it.
personality type, right? Extrovert and introvert, but also like needs and wants. Like if I grinded my face off from 2012 to 2018, and in 2018 I was living paycheck to paycheck, and like businesses weren't doing well, and I had more needs. Guess what? I'm going to keep working hard because I have to. But I was fortunate enough to put myself in a position where I didn't have to work every single hour of every day. And so
Mm-hmm.
just because our culture celebrates certain values or certain ends, and this is maybe a separate conversation um, around fame and around notoriety and around extravagance and excessive riches, and basically like setting the net worth target and then hitting it and then 10xing it and hitting it and 10x and just like basically moving the carrot further and further out for your entire life. At some point, you need to analyze what you actually need or want. And so, yes, introvert, extrovert, and personality type, but then also like uh, uh, what I want to be chasing. Like social media is the marketing department of On the Regimen. And I don't have interest in making content for any other reason. And I'm not even judging people who do in this moment. Like, I think it's probably net negative if a lot of someone's sense of self-worth is coming from what they're, someone who doesn't even have businesses associated with it, and maybe they're not educating, they're not trying to inspire, but it's just pure like validation, butt selfie life, etc. And then like living off of that positive feedback, probably not optimal. um I don't know how I got on that tangent,
Yeah,
but
no, I love the tangent. I think you're hitting a main point, which we'll probably circle back with, and just to kind of hold it tight, to the three lessons from Gary, real quick, is one, being authentic to yourself, right? Knowing kind of your needs and wants and what you want out of life. And I think you're probably touching on a second point, and I feel like I've heard you say this before, maybe even in our own conversations, about when you're around a lot of different types of individuals that are successful, you see that the same game continues to get played, which is the goalposts just keep moving down the field. And it's like being on the wrong ladder, right? Make sure you're not moving goalposts but you're actually playing the wrong game.
Yeah, and
You
and
know?
I would even say that's just a lesson, that because Gary's been very clear, like, I want to play the game forever. I want to buy the Jets. He's not, once I
Mm-hmm.
make this much, I'm going to retire on a beach. Like that's separate from him. But yet, let's thank you for reining me in.
Sure, got you.
Two other lessons from Gary. Um, man, I go back to a lot of his like cliche. Uh, I've said cliche like 15 times this podcast. I go back to a lot of his uh, the type of content he was making in 14, 15, 16.
Mm-hmm.
If you live for the if you live for the weekends, your shit is broken kind of like mindset around, in this time that we live in, we have the opportunity to actually enjoy work. And I
Mm-hmm.
have the privilege of doing something I really enjoy, and after spending 2 years back in the day of doing something I really really didn't like. And so, he was in that era very very much encouraging people who disliked their 9 to 5 to spend less, buy fewer Gucci bags, do less partying, save, be smart, and maybe side hustle your way. If you hate your job, side hustle your way into potentially finding something that you enjoy more, which could become
Mm-hmm.
more fulfilling. And the trade-off is the short-term hedonistic pleasures and spending, but the long-term upside is Friday night feels like Sunday night. Like
Yeah.
there are
Yeah.
no Sunday scaries, because it's like, cool, I'm excited for what I get to do tomorrow, and that's
I think the
unbelievable.
perfect visual on that was, I think he said something along the lines of like putting wine cases in his friends' cars from college that had BMWs, and he's still hacking it at the liquor store. But now today, where are those friends that were driving the 3 Series that he was putting the wine in the trunk, right? Like, I think
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
visual, is like being okay with the sacrifice if you're actually chasing what you actually want. And then if you're not willing to do that, maybe stop complaining.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Something like that, right? Like,
Absolutely.
if you don't really want to take the sacrifice, maybe you don't really want it, or maybe it needs to get worse for you. I think Alex Hormozy said something like, hey, maybe you need to gain 50 more pounds and come back, and then they'll be painful enough, or you need to lose 50,000 more dollars. And they're like, oh, you know what, maybe I need to actually like do better with my finances, like to make it hurt to the point where you actually are encouraged to change. So the second point that I'm hearing there is along the lines of making the necessary sacrifices for a life that you really want. And then I think you've been a testament to this whole podcast of like being crystal clear on the life you want. You got out of accounting because you knew it was crystal clear that you didn't want that. But then the vision of what you wanted to actually attain in your business and everything else, you were willing to grind for that because it was very clear where you're headed. And then it just had some iterations over time, because being around Gary, I think it's like having a night where you're on drugs a little bit, probably, which is like, oh man, I'm gonna rock the world. And then the next day you wake up like, well, I'm still me with my level of energy. So let's align our life in a way that works. So I'll leave room for a third one, even if it's from a time past, maybe if it's even something that you've said before. What would be lesson number 3 from being around Gary?
Lesson number 3. Let's circle back. I'll think
Sure.
of something good, but let's circle back.
Yeah, yeah. No, I got the next question in the clip, man. I came
Let's
I came
go.
ready for this one. So, let's talk about your training business, right? So you train a gamut of professionals, poker players, policemen, elderly, triathletes, right? Like, you get the broad range. So it's kind of cool because you actually get, just like myself being in real estate, you get broad exposure to a lot of people from a lot of different walks of life, which is cool. And something that connects both you and myself is a connection to poker players, an appreciation for the game. What would you say is some of your striking differences I know you've trained Jamie Staples. I know behind the scenes you've probably trained some other notable poker players and had them kind of come into your world. What's been the difference when you've been training people that play a game like poker versus, say, a typical W-2 worker, policeman, fireman? What do you notice are some of the differences in training that avatar, versus any other?
Yeah. So you dealt poker for a long time, so you understand
Mm-hmm.
poker players well. Most, not most, that's the wrong term. Many poker players are degenerates,
Yes.
plain and simple, in like gambling, lifestyle,
Vices. Yep.
vices. Wake sleep hours is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it was either the '03 or the '04 World Series of Poker. ESPN did a segment on Daniel Negreanu, who, you know, isn't what he is now, but like this was kind of one of the first real public national, spots on him. But he was talking about his day to day life, and he would wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning, and he would pack this cooler full of healthy foods, and he would go to the casino, and he would grind for 8, 9 out, like essentially a 9 to 5, 9 to 6, treating it like a full time job. He had his lunch in there, he had his snacks in there, like he was a professional. He was going to work. He was dialed in. He went home at the time he goes home and did it again the next day and again the next day and again the next day. Like he had a real schedule, a routine. Most live poker players don't do that. And for good
Mm-hmm.
reason, right? Like games are better on a Friday night or a Saturday night. And if you have a soft table, you're not going to get up and leave at 9 o'clock because you have a bedtime and you have a 7 a.m. workout scheduled. You have a huge plus EV opportunity to like make way more money than normal. And so you're going to play until that guy or those guys or whoever, till that game breaks. Um,
Mm-hmm. And then that's 4 in the morning, and then now it's like, all right, time to eat something, pass out, wake up at 2, and then what do you do at 2, right?
Yeah, well, and then at two, then like your schedule might be off. I actually lived with in college. I lived with a professional limit hold'em player, and he was playing a lot of online back then. Oh 06, oh 07, oh 08, oh 09,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of live since. But we all laughed. He almost never went to class. He, anytime you'd walk in, like it could be any time of the day or night, and you walk into his apartment. We had 3 apartments on the same floor, and there were 2 of us in each one. You walk into like open door policy. You walk into his apartment. He might be sleeping at 2 p.m. He might be awake at 2 a.m. He's got his laptop open with a bunch of heads up tables open, and he's like ready to. It's a completely different lifestyle for someone who's not used to it. And there's so many downsides to not having a consistent wake sleep schedule
Mm-hmm.
physiologically and
Mm-hmm.
mentally, and it makes it so hard to stick to consistent eating patterns, especially like positive ones that are, if you want to lose fat, if you want to build muscle, if you want to make progress in any direction. And so one of the big things with poker players, and it's funny because you and I talked about this not too long ago, is a focus on sleep. And that means getting enough sleep and getting high quality sleep. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, Jamie and Matt, you referenced the Staples brothers. They actually they were great. They weren't an example of this, at least during the bet. Like they were focused, they were getting sleep. They like their tournament schedule was set up in a way so, and their content schedule and life schedule where they were on good routines. But a lot of poker players I've worked with haven't been. And so that's the number one big rock to move is find a way to get as much as you need. Maybe it's 7, maybe it's 8, maybe it's 6 for some people, but get enough high quality sleep every night. The next one is getting on a consistent meal timing schedule, right? So in the example you gave, it's like, or that I gave that you built on, where you, the fun player is there until 4 o'clock in the morning. So you're there till 4 o'clock in the morning, and then you're
Mm-hmm.
eating In-N-Out burger in the middle. Like your food choice and timing is way off. You wake up at 2 p.m. the next day. You're weirdly hungry. You have no schedule. Getting a consistent wake sleep schedule and getting a consistent meal timing schedule. For someone who wants to lose body fat and um, is playing a lot of poker, some type of fasting could work well, right? So time restricted eating, having a, maybe you wake up and you're playing online. Just to give an example, those first 4 to 6 hours of the day, you're only having coffee, drinking water, focused, getting hands in. And then you eat a big high protein lunch, and then you have a snack in the afternoon, and then a big high protein dinner. And then doing that for a number of days in a row and weeks in a row. And that's going to become a habit. And it's just way easier to be close to your protein and calorie targets if you're largely eating the same types of foods, roughly eating around the same time, and you're sleeping a solid amount every night. Those are the two
Yeah.
places that I'd start, especially with poker players, because you referenced W-2 employees and how they're different. Someone who works a standard 9 to 5, well, their sleep schedule comes more easily because it's very rare that they have to be working at 1 o'clock in the morning. Um, so those are a couple of the big differences.
Yeah, so kind of lassoing them in. And as you were talking too, I was kind of seeing the vision a little bit, which is fasting being one of the probably the keys, just because cognitively, if you're fasting, you can actually be in a more elevated mindset, anyways, right? For thinking and being on the table, not
Mm-hmm.
feeling heavy, not feeling tired, and then having eating windows. So you end up having a routine in a window versus like a standard like I eat at 3 and 4 and whatever, like that's more regimented, right?
Mm-hmm.
So poker players being different than the rest, and it seems like a lot of poker players have really gotten into fitness, meditation, biohacking, because why wouldn't you, right? You're playing a game where you need to have your mind at the highest level, right? So it seems like there's been a huge trend towards um, health within the poker community, which is awesome, which is good to see, which makes tougher competition, which keeps on elevating, making the game thinner and thinner on how good you are compared to the next guy when you're trying to level up even on those inches, right?
Yeah, definitely. It all adds up, every percentage here and there. And so being physically and mentally healthier, and being sharper, getting enough sleep, uh, like you said, if you a lot of people do have better cognitive performance with a little bit of caffeine, properly hydrated, and in a fasted state, compared to if you just ate a giant meal and you have a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
a desire for a nap. And so yeah, it's become more popular. I know, like, healthy food delivery services in June, July in the WSOP. There's been more and more of them popping up. There's more options, which is amazing. I'm really happy to see it.
Yeah, no, love it. And then I think that'll lead right to the next question, which is what has been some of the main differentiating character traits of people that you've seen that have actually stuck with the program, gotten in shape, stayed in shape, that actually won in the game of fitness, right?
Hmm.
You've trained a lot of people, you had a lot of people, even like myself, right? I think we're on our third iteration of joining, falling off, joining, falling off. This last time for me, the difference was actually committing to you for the one full year, right? I
Hmm.
know that you only go usually like 3-4 months at a time. I'm like, hey, I don't care what you say. I'm committed to this for a year.
Hmm.
And by default, I think we started in November. We're in July now. I'm down like 25 pounds. The cut hasn't been that bad. It's been workable within my lifestyle, but I'm still like, hey, I'm on this 1 year journey, and then we'll all reassess in a year versus like I think 4 months, 3 months, which is a good commitment, sometimes leads to where it's easy to jump on and jump off, right? But
Hmm.
what have been some of the character traits that you've seen of people that have really gotten it, in all the people that you've trained, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because, look, you can go very uh, obvious character traits, right? Somebody who's unbelievably type A, borderline neurotic,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't want to eat out because they're afraid that they might get their exact nutrition facts wrong, is afraid to eat anything that is deemed unclean, even if it fits their calorie and macronutrient targets. Like, someone who comes to me with that type of personality is very likely to achieve whatever their goal is on paper. However, for someone like that, there's actually more progress to be made on the mental side of being okay with having a donut, being okay with having a slice of cake at your daughter's second birthday. Um, and so it's like, what are the characteristics of somebody who makes progress on paper? Well, Somebody who's wired that way is definitely more
Hmm.
likely to make progress than the rest of us, the other 90 to 95% of us, I would say. Um, I don't know that there are, like, you could take two groups of people. One group has like X characteristics, personality characteristics, and one group has Y characteristics or personality traits, uh, setting aside this super neurotic batch. Um, People from both groups are going to make progress at different times of their lives, and aren't going to make progress at different times in their lives. So it isn't necessarily the individual characteristics. It can be where someone's at that leads to whether or not they make progress and whether or not that progress sticks. And that can be, my good buddy Jordan Syatt, when he was coaching Gary, he worked every minute always, and he barely slept for a number of years, and he lost massive amounts of strength and tons of muscle and gained a bunch of body fat, and it was because he was fully committed to his business. Somebody who, a father who just his wife just had triplets, for example, like, that next year after his wife gives birth isn't going to be the best year of fitness of his entire, even with the motivation of like being there for your family and being a good role model, like having that many little bodies around and things to do and lack of sleep, like he's just not going to lose 30 pounds of fat during that year. Or we
Yeah.
should say he's far less likely to than somebody who is in a season of their life where they have a little bit more time. They have things more dialed in. There aren't any like personal life black swan type, close relative passes suddenly or something like that. Like, it's less about the characteristics of the individual and more about what's going on in their lives. Now, there
Yeah.
are definitely things from a programming perspective that can help someone make and maintain that progress compared to somebody who doesn't make or maintain that progress. And some of those are excessive restriction of food choice, right? You tell someone you can only eat vegetables if their primary goal is fat loss. Like, and that person loves a good burger now and again, but you can only eat vegetables. That's going to lead to this like binge and restrict cycle of, okay, I'm going to eat these foods that I'm allowed to eat for a certain amount of time, but not forever. And so it's on the wagon, off the wagon. It can be the size of a calorie deficit. Somebody whose caloric maintenance is 2,400 calories per day, if you have them eating between 1,800 and 2,000, they're not going to be that hungry. It's going to be relatively maintainable for probably an extended period of time. If you put that same person on a 1,000 to 1,200 calorie diet, or if they're not even tracking, but they're just over restricting because they feel like that's what they need to do to lose body fat, you can't stick to that as long. So you're going to lose fat faster, and then you're going to rebound, and then you're not going to be
Yeah.
able to stick to it because you're going to be
Yeah.
starving. Um, on the training program design perspective, uh, exercise selection. So if there are coaches who will make every single client barbell back squat, barbell bench press, barbell deadlift, heavy. Like, that's just what we do. And I used to be like that to an extent. Not everyone needs to be doing the big three powerlifting moves. Uh, if somebody wants to, awesome. But if a client tells me, hey, I hate Bulgarian split squats, like they are my least favorite exercise, is there anything else we could do? I'm not going to say, no, we have to do Bulgarian split squats because it'll make you tougher, and I'm going to put them at the beginning of every single leg day for an entire year. Like, uh, we
Thank
can
you.
work.
Thank you for letting me know.
We can hit a reverse lunge. We can hit a
Yeah.
single leg RDL.
Yeah.
We like there, and so exercise selection, total amount of training volume. A lot of training programs just have someone in the gym for way too much time for their goal. Yes, if you're an advanced trainee and you've built a solid amount of muscle and you want to squeeze out those natural gains and build a little bit more muscle, you got to spend a lot of time in the gym. However, for most people, 3 to 4 days a week, 45 minutes is probably a good target, that
Hmm.
is sustainable, that's maintainable. It's not 6 days a week, 2 hour workouts, which you might be able to do for 2 weeks, but not forever.
Yeah. Yeah. No, no. And what I hear you say, correct me if I'm wrong, is in your years of experience, what you've really found is that if you can help shift people's habits even slightly, but they can stick with it consistently, that's the win.
Hmm.
Because type A person could also hit the goal, but then if they decide that that's not their goal anymore and that business is,
Hmm.
then it's all about business and it's nothing about health.
Hmm.
Versus the person that, like you said, you for the rest of their life, if they worked out 3 4 times a week, got in a decent amount of steps a week, 80 to 90% of the time ate decently nutritious foods while having some of the things that they enjoyed and had a good quality of life, may not be stage ready at all times, but could actually be in relatively optimal health shape and be happy with where they're at and how they look in clothes, and have a positive feedback loop that just keeps that actually keeps the carousel going. Versus, oh, it's going to be this intense program is the one.
Hmm.
Um and and again, no silver bullets, right? It's just more about like, it's such an infinite game that you realize it's like, oh, if you can just help change course on if they're going to infinitely eat bad or infinitely eat a little bit better plus work out a little bit more, they'll have a better life and probably stick with it.
Yeah. Very well
Yeah.
said. That's
Yeah,
100%
thanks, man.
correct.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot, and I really appreciate your spirit, Mike. I think I've followed, just like yourself, a lot of fitness people over time, and I think sometimes for marketing's sake, you just have different personality types. Some people want to bark, some people are real soft, and a certain. I think you find a good balance between strength and graciousness towards your clients. I think I would say that that's a testament why I've come back to you multiple times, because I know that, hey, you know what, Mike is holds me accountable, which I don't always enjoy, but it's good for me. But I'm also not I'm not getting the beat down if I go off course. Like, always correcting in a good way, but not feeling like I just want to completely fall off, and then also not feel like, oh man, if I don't do it perfect, Mike's done with me, right? So,
Thank
you
you,
know,
man.
yeah, I think
You
you
you just gave me a third Gary lesson.
okay, nice, we got it.
Um, Gary, this is borderline a little inside baseball,
Okay,
which I'm okay with because I think he'd be okay with this.
all right.
Gary does a great. I don't even know if this is this. I don't know what the lesson is, but something that I admire. He does a really good job of pulling people toward the middle in
Hmm.
personal, like, private conversations. And what I mean by that is, in this hyper polarized time, with social media probably being a mode of communication that leads to a little bit of it, various other factors. But in the last 7 8 years, we've seen much more on the political front. We've seen much more just like hyper polarization. If you're coming at an issue from too far outside that, like, middle 60 to 80%, we'll say, Gary will
Hmm.
argue the other side. And if you're coming at it from the other side, from that like 5 to 15% extreme, we'll say, Gary will play the other side. So he very much has a spirit of bringing people together, and like human first, and almost like a stabilizing quality that I
Mm.
really admire, and have seen it work, with myself in various conversations and with others. And yeah, that's lesson number three.
That I really like that, the tug of rope that gets people to common ground no matter which side, and that takes a lot of skill too. It's hard, especially if you lean any kind of direction. It's hard to not, in your own triggered way, like, let me pull you more my direction, right?
Yeah.
Versus a true middle ground where, like, hey, let's actually be relatively open, and my because it's not black and white. It really isn't black and white. It's lots of shades of gray, in some pursuit of like justice and fairness, and just everything, all the different topic points that we could just press buttons and I could say different things, and inside you're like, ugh, like
Yeah. Yeah.
we're just we're
But
just
but
wired we're
and guess what?
wired
If
for it.
if I'm if I'm passionate about one specific topic, and he's trying to
Hmm.
pull me to the middle, and I'm like, "Arr," but then in the next conversation, I see him on the same topic arguing my side against someone else who's on the other side. It's like, oh no, he really is, yeah, purple, for lack of a better term, like really, really trying to bring people together. And
And I think I would add one last thing to that, which is that means he's actually listening. Because even if he's pulling you to the middle, but then using your same point to bring that other person in the middle, the goal is the same, but he's actually still listening to what you're saying
yeah,
and tactically using it, which is awesome. So yeah, 3 lessons of Gary there. We got it. We got it out of you.
let's go.
In respect of your time, I do have a power three that I'll finish up with. There was one or two other questions I wanted to finish up with, but I think I'll just finish up with one, maybe two before we get to the power three if you have the time.
We're good. We're good.
All right. So now here we are, it's 2023. A lot of your life, or at least what you wanted to show of your life, was visible from 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 ish. And then now your life is a little bit more off camera. You do the podcast with Jordan, you've written the book Eat It. It's a great book, guys, check it out. Back to that middle ground balanced approach. You train other trainers, which probably you found a little bit more leverage in, because it's, you could tactically train one-on-one, but if you're training trainers that they train 100 or 400, you multiply yourself, right? So you multiply impact. um Going forward, it's kind of a two-part questions. What are some of the things that you're doing now that you didn't do 2016 or 2018 to 2020? What are some things now that you didn't do, or you do now that you didn't do then? And then also, um, do you have any projects that you're kind of working on for the next round that are kind of pulling you forward? Do you have somebody that you're actually kind of like how when you were continuing to train Gary, he's kind of somewhat of a mentor, right? Do you have a current mentor that's kind of pulling you in some certain directions, or that you're working with because you're wanting to head in certain directions? Just a perspective of like the forward march of Mike Vacanti going into 24 and 25.
So I don't have an individual mentor right now.
Okay.
I
Got it.
tend to think about, and definitely not a business mentor. I tend to think of mentorship almost like any advice that we're accepting, or consciously or unconsciously. So that could be just what you're consuming from a book, from Twitter, from lyrics in a song, from a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So I have out like, back in 2013 during an intense workout, I'm listening to a YouTube motivational track with Ray Lewis giving a pump up speech. Like his words are
Mm-hmm.
almost a form of mentorship.
Yeah.
Uh, and so what I'm consuming, I guess, is my mentor more than any individual. I'm on day 23 of zero scrolling, which is something that I'm
Mm.
pretty pumped about for me personally, because I
That's
kind of,
that's and that's really hard to do, man. Congrats on that so
thank you.
far.
I think that I'm disproportionately negatively affected by it because I see other
Mm-hmm.
people seem to do just fine, but I'll spend hours a day consuming vertical video, reels, YouTube shorts is a big one, scrolling Twitter, and it's almost like information overload that just makes me feel awful. And so by really being limiting and intentional about what I consume, uh, and consuming a much smaller number of topics. If I intentionally seek out a 15-minute educational YouTube video on a subject, it's very different than 120 10 or 15-second clips on 120 different subjects that are all just fragmenting, bouncing around in my brain. I can't handle that for whatever reason. Uh, so no real mentor other than what I'm reading and looking at. Uh, 2016 to 2020 range versus now. You know what? I'll talk projects first. No, I don't have any projects lined up. I don't. I honestly just I like coaching clients. I like helping people lose fat, build muscle, feel better, healthier, better blood work, like less pain, more flexibility, more mobility, like more uh, dopaminergic positive direction, whether that means increasing weight on the bar, seeing the scale go down, feeling better week over week, month over month. And I'm good with the number of clients I have right now. Like it's not the most people I've ever worked with, obviously, but from YouTube, from websites that SEO, from clients coming back for a specific reason or not, from referrals, which is where a lot of my business is driven, uh, from people who tell a friend or a family member and they sign up for coaching. I'm pretty comfy with where I'm at and I'm enjoying it. I don't have a grand desire to make more money than I make right now. Like,
Mm.
I have all the clothes I want. I love the house that I live in. I like my lifestyle. And, there was a part of me that back in the day really prioritized money, not for the thing, not for like the flash that it would give, but for the sense of security that it gave me. But I realized in like that net worth increasing and goal moving example, there's no amount of money that's going to bring security because we're all going to die.
Enough. There's never
There's never
enough.
enough. There's never enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could have I don't even know what the example is, but there's never you could have 100 million in investments and in the bank, etc., and you could get hit by a truck tomorrow, or like a biological weapon could get dropped. Like anything could. So there's no security on Earth, physical security here on Earth. So it doesn't matter what the number is. And I have come to the realization that I'm at a point where I'm pretty good with maintenance on the business front. A client might get to a place where they're happy with how they look. They're in that like 12 to 14% body fat range. They've increased their lifts. They don't necessarily want to lose more fat. They feel really good. They want to stay where they are so they can continue working out and continue paying attention to nutrition, but they're not trying to achieve any outlandish goals. I'm in like a business maintenance period. So I don't have any 2024, 2025 business aspiration. The majority of my current thinking and I guess goals, although there aren't specific goals, but 2024, 2025 planning is around self-improvement is the wrong word, but like it's some form of being better. And I'm consuming from all over the place on this. I got a stack of books right here. I uh, watching a I'm not Catholic, but watching a YouTube series from I forget the priest's name, but on virtues and
Mm-hmm.
vices, and like
Mm-hmm.
taking a lot of that to heart and looking at areas where I can be better as a man, as a person, um, and and so that's where the majority of, I guess, my like growth opportunity, or like where I care about getting better the most. I always care about the health and fitness space because I'm interested in it. Like genuine curiosity can push you towards something that you can't force yourself to do. So
Mm-hmm.
anything new, any changes, like trying different styles of training, paying attention to any changes in the research. The benefit is working with clients. Like obviously it is my job, but it's also such a massive interest that's always a piece. But yeah, the growth opportunity and thing that I'm the most interested is definitely something around what I just described.
Yeah, it's from the inside. That's kind of what I'm hearing, is that it's better, but from the inside. So it may not be visible to the outside eye, but you'll know, like the work that you're doing and that you're chipping away at and working your hammer on right now. That's the most interesting to you and the most growth oriented, is actually becoming, how is Mike Vacanti becoming a better man, a better husband. You're close to your family, so being grounded in your family, exploring faith,
Yeah.
what, no matter what your designation is toward it, but having some understanding of maybe something beyond us, right? And your feelings towards that, and your interaction with life based on that. So it's like, and I think that's where it gets to, right? Is self-realization. It's a lot of your needs are met. You have a sense of peace around enough, which is nice. So you're not working against frantic anxiety of like, I need more money, I need more work, I need more money, which is a tunnel that just buries you, right? And so it seems like you found a way to exit left in a nice way. But I always want to kind of dig at it, because I feel like, say, 123-year-old Mike Vacanti passes away, and they find like three books that never really got published, right? Hiding in your drawers. Just to leave a sneak peek, has there ever been, or did you ever start like a book or another project that didn't see the day of life and is not completely dead to you in your file folders, in your desk drawers, in the back of your mind?
I have a million things that I've written that I've never published. Yeah,
Okay. Okay,
definitely,
got it. Because I
definitely.
know you enjoy writing a lot, so
Hmm.
I figure that there's a lot of, and we're our own worst critics sometimes about the things we have. So excited to see if some of that ever comes
Part,
together.
part of it too on the content creation side is, like I said, it's a marketing vehicle for business. But if it wasn't a marketing vehicle for business, there's a fear that the stuff I'm talking about is not only more would not only be more polarizing, but would actually be detrimental for business. And so
Hmm.
there's like a part of me that doesn't want to say a lot of uh, there's a part of me that doesn't want to make content, because if I'm going to make content, I want to just be fully transparent, like on insert any topic, and it's not like, oh, how is this going to be perceived, let me say this in a way that like doesn't offend. It's just going to be what I believe to be true. And at this point, I'm not ready to do that and call that cowardice. Like, it probably is, but I'm not going to like beat the same drum of make the same type of content that I know can drive business. Like that doesn't interest me any longer. So maybe there will be a day where I feel like saying whatever I think publicly, and dealing with the consequences. Um, which, who knows, that might be like the right thing to do, but it's not today. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's right now. If you came, it would be raw and you haven't fully realized what that actually is. So there's not enough of a pull because you're also the type that if you had to get it to the world, you most likely would, right? Like I think that's like when like from what I'm hearing, it's like as you're wrestling with thoughts, um you could come out and do more of the same, but that's not interesting because your time's already like booked up. You don't need more, right? It's
right.
But it goes back to more like what you're working on now. It needs to be fully fleshed out in some ways, because otherwise you don't also want to stand behind something that you didn't fully flesh out, but then also is a little bit a
There's
riskier stance.
there's positions that I don't hold closely because I'm not educated enough or haven't thought through enough or haven't got there on, and there's positions that I
Yeah.
am clear on that I'm not voicing because no one is voicing except for the people who are monetizing the fact that they are voicing those positions because they play in that
Mm,
arena, not everyone who's making content for the purpose of growing their business. And so
yeah.
there's an ego
Yeah.
thing at play too. That's like, okay, if I know that I can make this type of content and get this kind of feedback and like be really liked and have consensus, versus say something else that people disagree with or don't understand, doesn't drive business at all. Like, it's, yeah,
Yeah. and
not there,
and
not
also
there yet.
too, yeah, and also too, like you've kind of been able to get away from the attention, which probably feels
It's amazing.
peaceful in
It's
some.
the best.
Yeah. Like
It's the
you
best.
have some of your peace back, so like so drawing attention again yourself on something that's definitely going to get its more fair share of eyeballs, it doesn't feel great. So to take that burden on again, it would really have to be worth it.
Correct. And like you said, and I have to be more shored up on a lot of positions.
Yeah. Yep.
And
I
I'm
like
just
it.
not that
Well,
smart. I'm not that articulate. I'm not that good on the fly. Like we're doing this podcast because I like you and it's fun, but I don't do pod. I have my podcast. I talk to Jordan, but we just, mess around on there. Like, this is my probably worst form of communication. And so it definitely wouldn't be in this medium if or when it ever happened.
understood. Yeah. Well, I do appreciate you making
Dude,
the
this is
time for
fun.
me.
I like talking
Yeah.
with you. Yeah, this is great.
This is good. And I think we're almost the exact same age. We have a lot of similar points. So there's a friendship, guys, that kind of goes behind this. So if it feels very effortless, that's
Yeah.
why. I will get to the power three with respect to your time. So
Power three. Yes,
same
I
three
I now have
questions.
I got probably 5 to 6 minutes.
Oh yeah, we can knock it out in four. Power three, same three questions, ask every single guest, just try to create some standard between beginning and end of the podcast.
I like it.
Love these amazing conversations with great people like yourself. So question number one is, what is something that you're learning right now that might be interesting for the audience to look into? It could be a book, could be a podcast, could be a theme, or something that you're really just kind of gnawing on. Interesting, non-interesting, doesn't matter. What's an education piece that might be interesting for the audience to look into?
Ask me again, because you already showed me these questions and I was already thinking about the person who I was going to recommend for the podcast. So ask me the one you just did again, because I was completely
Okay,
zoned out.
sure. Well, actually, we'll go backwards. Question number three. Amazing people run with amazing people. I like, we're all so close to each other. Like, and that's been a testament to my own life, because now as I'm doing the podcast, when I turn left and turn right and start asking things, if you guys wonder why amazing guests are actually jumping on and talking with myself, and I don't hold myself in the highest of regards, right? I'm a good guy. I care about my family. Haven't had as much success as I would like in my life, but I've had some. But if you guys are wondering about how I get the people I have on, it's years and years and years of being a person of value, and being in the right rooms, and then also like just actually caring about people, and being interested in people, and also asking in a way and not being afraid to ask, because a lot of times people are open. You just have to actually open your mouth and ask for it, right? So my ask is that we, as amazing people that know other amazing people, um collectively keep coming together. Who is someone that you wouldn't mind making an introduction to, that you think would be a good fit on the podcast, Mike?
uh, my boy Danny Miranda. Danny Miranda has
All
a
right.
podcast called The Danny Miranda Show.
Okay.
He is a very hard worker, a very high energy, like uh, borderline enlightened young hustler. I'm a huge
Mm.
fan of his, and I think he would. I think you'd really enjoy talking to him. I think he'd like to do the show. I think it'd be really fun.
All right, awesome. Well, Danny Miranda in Austin, Texas, I'm coming for you.
Let's go. Let's go.
There we go. We will definitely, for all the recommendations, guys, we will try to see who we can squeeze into season one. Season one's pretty much filled up or is being filled up. But we are taking seriously these recommendations. So if they're not in a season one, you will find them in a season two. And I really love the effect that it'll keep building on top of itself. So that's question three. We'll go question two now. We're going in reverse. What is an actionable tip that the audience could take today, that if they started applying it to their life, it would actually be life changing if they took it on as a habit and started doing it today? What
Sleep.
uh, what is an actionable tip?
Sleep. Take your sleep seriously. Stop scrolling Instagram until 1:30 in the morning. Stop going on those websites that you're going on at 2 o'clock in the morning, and start going to bed, putting your phone down, getting 8 hours, dark, blackout curtains, cool the room. Yes, that's
All
the
right,
actionable tip. It's going to
done.
pay off in massive
Sleep,
ways.
sleep, baby.
In
Get that sleep.
physiological, psychological. You're going to feel better the next day. Your appetite's going to be more regulated. Your it's going to pay massive dividends.
Love it. Love it. Question number one is something that you've been looking into. Book, podcast, theme, interesting, non-interesting. What's an educational, something that you've been kind of just digging in on a little bit that'd be interesting if the audience wanted to kind of peek over your shoulder a little bit, like this is something Mike Vacanti is looking into that might be interesting to them?
Um, I alluded to it. There is a YouTube, and by the way, I don't care if you are the most devout atheist of all time. I don't care if
Mm-hmm.
you are Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, a practicing Jew, an atheist Jew, Protestant. I don't where you come from, whether you even think about this stuff. I found the there's a lecture by Father Bishop Barron on or Bishop Barron on the seven virtues and vices, and I listened. It's probably I think it's 6 or 7 years old, but I listened to it about a year ago, and I listened to it again recently, and I really enjoyed it. So that would be my like
Mm.
recommended piece of it's probably an hour and 15 long, but yeah, that's what I would check out.
Never a bad idea to hear how to work on being a better person, and virtues and vices, no matter what your political connection is or your designation toward faith or non-faith approach to life. We still got to deal with each other. We still got to deal with the bad and the good. And yeah, and I'll actually check that out myself. I don't think I've watched that one, Mike. So
Yeah,
appreciate the recommendation there.
you
So
bet.
we are going to end it here. I'm going to end the recording, and I'm going to get to do what I've always wondered happen on TV when the guests lean over and talk to the guests, and we don't get to hear those conversations. So for now, you guys are done with this conversation. Mike, thank you very much for being on. I appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.